In this video, I have a discussion with Kevin Kuhn. He's an entrepreneur and lecturer in AI, and we covered many topics from the early days of ChatGPT to Agentic AI and what organizations need to basically adopt AI and go agentic. So without telling too much of the contents, this is Kevin Kuhn. Have fun. I'm excited that you are on. How are you today?
Me too. Good. It's a bit hot as we just discussed, but beside that, all good.
Yeah, we are in the midst of a heat wave in Switzerland. I think all over Europe. It's the 25th June of 2026. And yeah, I invited you because, we know each other. We are from the same city, basically. Before I say something wrong, maybe you can introduce yourself. Who are you? What you do? What is your role? And you also run a company, an AI company. So who are you?
Good, thank you. So, as you already mentioned, my name is Kevin. I'm the co-founder of the company GOP. We're based in Lucerne, Switzerland. And what we do is we have built over the past 3 to 4 years a platform that collects a lot of unstructured data from the internet. It could be from all different kinds of sources. And then we try to find the needle in the haystack. So we scrape the data, we scan through it, we try to identify what is relevant for whom. And then we tailor that with internal documents to show companies, especially manufacturing companies, what does that mean, for example, what's happening in the outside compared to their strategy that they have in-house, and how does that either match or go into different directions. Yeah, and besides running the company, I'm also a lecturer at different universities in Lucerne, and the third hat that I have on is I'm also a board member on an energy company in Zurich, Switzerland, and that's a bit about myself. I have 2 little kids, live in Lucerne, and yeah, that's what keeps me busy.
Cool, very nice. So yeah, you have a lot of knowledge about AI, machine learning, and obviously you run the company where you use AI heavily. But maybe let's look back a little bit. The ChatGPT launch is now a couple of years back. And how was it for you when ChatGPT first was there? How was that moment for you?
I was a bit skeptical at the very beginning. That was the first thing where I said, what's going on? Because years before, like in 2015, 2016, we were, I would say, very, very deep into natural language processing. So we did so many things with named entity extraction, sentiment analysis, but also very deep stuff. Like we trained our own neural networks to actually extract ingredients from recipes and all of that stuff. And that was really, really hard. And we always faced like big challenges to put something into production in the lab. It worked, or on our machines. But then all of a sudden there was this thing, this huge model that you could use and access via API from the very start. And we're like, okay, now I can give it the text and it creates the label, and it's actually not too bad, or actually much better than what we tried with the hard way. And so this was quite surprising, and for us, like it opened a completely new way of doing things. Before we were somehow blocked by the technology, and all of a sudden this blockage was removed. So we had access to do things that are then even more on the application layer and less on the fundamentals of the machine learning models itself. And at the same time, you also saw like this huge wave of adoption that everybody was just talking about ChatGPT and how amazing it is and everything. And companies were then trying to figure out how can we use that for our purposes. And then, as normal in Switzerland or in the EU, you always have the question that comes data privacy, data regulation, and then this stops again the innovation real quick. So this is a bit what I've seen. But overall, I need to say I'm quite happy with that. This happened because for us it's now much easier to talk about AI. Before you had to really try to convince people that AI is there, it's working, you need to do something, and now it's everybody somehow wants to do AI. They don't really know how, but this is a bit the state we're in, and everybody tries to figure out what could be a use case to leverage AI.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what would you say? It's now roughly 4 years in, and the speed of development is, I feel, ever increasing. What was most surprising for you for the speed of development? Okay, the first ChatGPT version we can always laugh about it, but at that time it was incredible. What's most impressive for you in the speed of development of these LLM technologies?
For me, it was really impressive when all of a sudden you were able to somehow work with it like as a coworker. It was not just like before you had to, I would say, prompt engineer and give in a very specific example, and now you just upload a bunch of documents and say, look, this is my context. I want to have this refactored or build a new feature, and all of a sudden it is able to retrieve context and plan by itself, and all of a sudden you have something that even you yourself, you're super surprised, say, wow, this would have cost me months and I would even not even have achieved that level of quality. And this is something, especially I would say in the past 1.5 year, where I've really seen remarkably quality increase, where it's not just like AI slop, but really something where you can say, hey, this is genius. And also all the problems with where does the sources come from, the hallucination, it's still a bit there, but much less than what we have before. And if you know how to instruct the machine correctly, you can retrieve almost everything out of it, and at a speed which is really insane.
Yeah, you said it's, I mean, these new, really powerful use cases are now possible, and but not so long ago. I mean, 2 years ago, it's not possible. And obviously, the models get better, but also the harness around the models, which now leads me to the topic, actually to the main topic of agentic AI, which is obviously not only just the prompt and the answer, but if you want to explain agentic AI to, let's say, a C-level, which is not too technical, how do you do that?
I describe it as some sort of a dedicated team that you have, like where you have highly specialized workers in there that know what to do one job very well, and they can communicate with each other and transfer tasks to each other. So it's like a digital twin of a workforce, if you want. That's very simply put. And then over the top, you have some sort of orchestration, somebody who tells them what to do, when, and maybe even how. But then the agents will then coordinate between each others. And I always joke and say, well, at the end, it's still a prompt in a loop, but it's a very specialized prompt, and that it does just one job and very precisely, and then it can execute it.
And so, have you seen in reality these agentic systems that work well, or is at the moment just everybody trying to figure out how to set that up? Maybe you have some stories to tell where there is a very good positive example, also to make it a bit more tangible, and maybe also an example where it was a fail, basically.
So I haven't yet seen it in full practice that companies would fully adapt agentic AI. They use it in sort of a process where you can imagine you have these N8N, for example, workflows or other similar tools where you can then have sequentially an AI doing one simple job, and then it will be a further process. But I would say some sort of autonomous AI agentic system where it will communicate and do stuff by itself, I haven't seen in practice. That's my experience so far. Right now you see that it's somehow bit used as a buzzword to just sell everything. That's something that I see, which is a bit, how to say, yeah, not ideal, not to say even harmful, because everybody's selling like Copilot or something as an agentic system, and they say, well, everybody's just talking about agents, where but an agent can do that, an agent can do that, and they believe that agents is just something you click on start and then it will know what to do and do the job, but it's actually so much hard training to let them do the right thing. And maybe one experience that I have made, which I found quite insightful and funny, there's this open source library called Paperclip, if I got it correct. Or Paperless? Paperclip. No, it's Paperclip.
Clip, yeah.
Paperclip, yeah. And I run that on my machine, and I basically built a digital clone of our company, of GOP. So what you start this local machine, and then it will have this role of a CEO, and then you give in a purpose what you want to do, and they say, hey, we want to become the best B2B SaaS company in competitive and market intelligence and strategic intelligence. And then the CEO said, well, that's a great idea, but I need a bunch of people. And then I asked who you need, and he said a CFO, CMO, CRO, and he basically created these profiles. And then I said, well, okay, go for it. And then I gave the access to those second level agents, let's say, to create other profiles they need. So the CTO that said, then I need a backend developer, I need a data engineer, etc. So this was quite easy to set up, and you see an organigram where you say like a chart of the business organization. You say, well, okay, that makes absolutely sense. If I would have unlimited resources, that would be a dream team. And then you start doing different projects where you can go in and say, look, this scope is to make us financially stable. This one is to penetrate a market or so. And then within that, you then delegate tasks to those mostly C-level to execute and say, dear CFO, make a liquidity plan or so. So what I did then, where I saw that was quite funny, is I said to the chief revenue officer, I said, look, how can we make more money? And then he went crazy. And then he asked all his little agents and he came up with a list. Well, we need to call Steven from Shark Lasers. And I was like, who's that? I never heard about Steven. So it somehow hallucinated and created these fake roles and fake customers, fake people out there. And it went absolutely bonkers. So the problem that I had then, I went in and who's Steven? He doesn't even exist. And then I almost wasn't able to get that pollution of that system out of the system again. It was absolutely impossible. So I had to destroy everything and start from zero. And then the CRO also said, well, can you create me a Gmail access? I need to send emails. I was like, no, stop, not that quick. And then another funny thing that happened was also I gave in a task, and then in the background I had Claude Code with the Max plan. That is somehow these $100 subscription. What it does in the background, it just starts different consoles to execute that stuff. And then within like half an hour, 40 minutes, it of course got blocked or run out of tokens because I hit the rate limit. And then some tasks were not closed, and it's as in the real life. Somehow it just faded, and nobody was responsible anymore. So I went into the system, saw this issue, and I said, "Who's responsible for that?" And then nobody was responsible for that, so it got lost like in real life. And I found this quite a funny anecdote. But long story short, what I have seen, what is the limitations, of course it will need loads of tokens. That's crazy. So if you would run that, I calculated to run that system I would pay somewhere between 7 to 10,000 Swiss francs a month. You can say it's still cheap if you would have human resources to compare it with, but this is the bottleneck, the first one. And then the bigger bottleneck that I see, you need a human like me to instruct the machine what to do. And I, as a human, I want to also a bit understand what's going on. So I need to have some sort of oversight to decide, hey, no, this is not the direction I've planned, or this is the direction. So I spend so much time just reviewing stuff that at the end, I'm the bottleneck and the others will just work and do stuff. And of course, you need to have the interconnectivity. They want to have the data from the HubSpot CRM system. They want to create a newsletter. They want to send emails via Gmail, etc. So you need to have all these connectors. And that's something that I believe in an enterprise, building agentic AI into an enterprise will be the biggest hurdle at all.
Yeah. Very funny anecdote. Yes, indeed. If you just let the AI do it, it can go bonkers. And yeah, just what you said now about these interconnections and basically the orchestration layer. What is your guess? Will there be like a super app from OpenAI or Anthropic that will organize everything, or is that something that you think every organization needs to build themselves, and you kind of make this orchestration meta layer connectivity? Sometimes you obviously not only live in the Microsoft world, you have your special applications, maybe even custom applications. How does that come together? What is your ideas around that?
I could imagine that will be a Zapier for AI, I think. I don't think that AI, OpenAI or any other will be able to build that, because what you see now, the step is, for example, some platforms already build their own MCP, which is basically the entry door that any AI could request something and then it will be processed and sent back. And you see that right now with large players that they already have that, and I think that will be the communication door. And I could imagine that the big players will just direct to that MCP, or you will have mcp.hubspot.com or any dedicated URL that is somewhere in App Store or something, and the machine will then know when to access that. But I don't think that they will build the ultra connector where you will connect stuff, because just simply in practice, at least in Switzerland, I don't know how many companies will actually be open or allowed to connect to that. I think that's the biggest restriction there, to, for example, let a US company like OpenAI connect to your core SAP system or core microdynamics system or something. That's probably the more challenging to even, they could build that, of course, but to really bring it into businesses, I think every player will build something individually. That's my guess.
Yeah, it's also probably something where you can build competitive advantage. So basically everybody using the same model, but not everybody can orchestrate as well as possible. And obviously, yeah. So that's an interesting take. Yeah. So I just want to step back one step. It's so we quickly jumped over that. So we talked about or you talked about these chat assistants like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. And obviously there are these tools like OpenAI's Codex or Claude Code, which are more like acting like agents. And maybe we can make a distinction between them. Maybe you can quickly explain what's the difference between ChatGPT and Claude Code.
Mhm. That's very important to distinguish them, because people perceive AI always, or most people always, as this little chat window where you can type a prompt and then it will do some magic. But the main difference between these systems is not the model, which everybody thinks, well, they have different models, but it's actually the engineering in front of it. Like, how is what you type in processed? And in these chat, you have usually like these few shots things where basically your prompt is sent to the model, and then it will be processed and it will give an answer back. And in systems like Cowork or Codex, it will first of all be able to understand what you have as a base. So you can give in a file system or access to certain folders, which by now you can also in the UI of the web user interface, but you have to upload everything, and then you have these so-called projects. But what happens in these other systems is, like, what you want to build is somehow tried to be re-engineered by the machine. So we'll try to understand what does Kevin actually want. It will, for example, if I give an instruction, we'll split that into sub tasks, for example, and then execute them one by one. And also monitor, am I finished? And if so, does that serve as an input for next? So the computation is much more complex than simply rewrite me this email, where you basically can just ask the LLM directly. It will do something, and there it's more of a huge orchestration system in the background that helps solve more complex problems like building an application.
Yeah, and obviously the ChatGPT is very helpful for, let's say, simple text translation or text creation, and also code creation. But in the end, if you really want to go serious about code creation, you need something like Claude Code. And I'm just curious, at Gopf in your company, how do you use agentic AI systems? Maybe also around coding. How do you use AI basically? I'm also sure you use ChatGPT and agents.
We
And
don't.
maybe you don't. Okay.
No, just to say, so we have everything in our end is on the Google Cloud. So that means we have the Gemini subscription. We all stopped using ChatGPT just also because of reasons. We don't really know where this company is heading and everything, because they're not profitable and it's not really very stable. And for us, this was also criteria to switch to Google. So we use Gemini for example, to answer emails. This is more on the admin and operational level. And then our CTO has a a Claude Code Pro license for $200. I have the Claude Max for $100, and other developer also they have Claude license. So for coding, we all work with Claude at the moment. And then what we also have is the GitHub Copilot. This is then for code review, and everything that we have built will be sent there to be checked against our repo, our unit tests, and every checks that we have added there. And then basically the way it works, or we work together, is I will talk to customers, to users, and get the requirements engineering. So they talk to me about what they like, what they don't like, what they would like to have. I then take notes or a transcript and paste that into Claude Code and say, Claude Code, how could we solve that? And do brainstorming with superpowers just to get a bit of an idea how could that look like. And I would say I go as far as I create a clickable prototype which has already quite a deep logic behind it, where I know if this happens, that happens, and then I put that code base that I built then on a repository on GitHub and say that we have a dedicated prototype underline, and then every prototype that we have has its own repo. And then our CTO basically takes the repo with the prototype, tries to understand what I wanted to build, and then he gives it the master repo where our application is, and then starts working on the integration where he says, look, there's a new feature, we're going to place it there. This is the data will be taken from Qdrant for the vector database or wherever. So he links that with the even more technical knowledge and the architecture knowledge. And then once he has built it, he tests it locally, he tests it on the dev environment. I go also on the dev environment and test it, and then he ships it to be deployed via GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions. Yeah.
Okay, interesting what you just explained. I think 4 years ago, this would have been a completely different process.
It was.
And maybe you can also explain how you did it in the past and what now these AI systems enabled you to either speed up and make basically better bets, better prototypes, just to better understand how it used to be and also what you gained out of this process.
Yeah, at the very beginning, you really had to paste in the code that you were working into the web interface. So I had to go to ChatGPT back then, and I really had to take the code, paste it in there, and then let it write the code or let it somehow get the errors out or the bugs out. And once it has that, I was able to paste that back into the code and then run it and do the test. And from the error log, I copied the error log into Gemini or ChatGPT and fixed it again. So there was tons of back and forth. And now what changed is I will actually go in and I will say, look, this is, I plan it with the plan mode to just get some ideas, and then it creates this huge master plan what it wants to build, and then it executes. And the beauty is it now does its own smoke tests or unit tests, or and even with Playwright, it starts the browser, it shows you what it does, it clicks and checks if everything is right. And this, before I always said you had like within 20 minutes, you had 80% of the project done. It looked very nice, but then you spend like the hours to debug the last 20%. And this is something that is reduced almost to zero. So I would say the code that you have right now is 95% you have in 30 minutes maybe now, but it works. And then you just make, you see, oh, I forgot some logical things, or oh, the button is not quite named quite right. So the level of I need to fix something in the in the logic or in the code is almost zero. It's just like UI and logic things that you now need to fix. So this is such a shift, and I would say we are at least 8 to 10 times faster now in building, and especially where we see the biggest gain is I talk to a customer, they tell me their problem. I build within an afternoon the prototype, I ship it over to our CTO, and he integrates in another 1 to 2 hours. And after like 3 days, we just had this example yesterday. I had a customer requesting a feature, built a prototype, sent it to the CEO, and now he said, I shipped it. And in 2 days, we shipped a feature that would have taken us maybe 2 or 3 months to ship before.
Yeah, it's interesting. And as I understand, you're right. It's not only the technical part. I mean, the coding use case is obvious, but it's also about basically product management. I mean, you collect feedbacks and then together with the AI, you filter out the nice pieces, and then you can literally use that same output to build the feature, and then you have the whole prototyping phase, as you just explained, which was not possible even like 2 years ago. And I think I mean, we do that also at NetNode all the time. We are just building now an application where we explore how the dashboard or the entry point should look like. And in the past, we needed to, create whatever Figma screens, and there was a discussion between what I wanted to have with a screen designer, and he needed to understand it. But now I just throw up multiple basically versions of it and explore different versions, even with real data, as you explained, and then you can really sense if that feature or that functionality makes sense in that purpose, and you can actually use the product from day zero, and that's very valuable and was not possible before. One other question I wanted to ask you: did you also try to use AI for certain things and then decided to not use AI anymore because it was just bad? Or do you say, okay, now it's a big bet, we try to bring AI into every of our processes? Or are there things which you tried and said, okay, actually, it's not the results are not good enough?
Yeah, especially when it comes to image creation, like creating images and so, but there is more on our end, the active decision not to use it, because I think that's a discipline in itself, and I was not really eager to spend a lot of time, because I think there you can spend like hours and hours and hours to make nice images. And I would say not the quality would be bad, but just the time it takes to engineer that and to maintain it for us is just, it's not our core business. And that's something that we then skipped. And I really also took the decision that that's something that I think there's so many AI generated images now out there that even I absolutely ignore them. I don't even read them because I got sick of it. So that I would rather hire a photographer that stops by at our office and makes really authentic pictures of us and use those rather than creating some AI images. So that's something we intentionally didn't pursue to deepen. And yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And just two things, I'm always again testing. One challenge that AI still has is reliably extracting information from large PDFs. That's something that we have as something that we are really trying in very different ways, and we're also trying the latest models and everything. And let's say that that's not as accurate right now as I would like. So this is something we still keep doing. And something I would wish is that I could have very nice PowerPoint presentations that I could just upload my design and say, just adapt it, make it nice looking, and add this, remove that. And that's not as smooth yet as I would expect, but that's maybe just a matter of time. But this is what we explained. Everything else, I would say everything that is text-based works super well. We didn't spend any time creating videos or something, or audio or music. So that's just for us that we, yeah, a bit the playground that we play in.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I want to dive into more on the organization side. We talked about technology and, that it's cool to have all these AI and agentic tools. But in the end, if we want to establish this AI, let's say, towards AI organizations, what what is important to do right or what can go wrong? Maybe you also have some stories from your experience. So basically, how organizations need to evolve to adopt AI in a good way.
Mhm. The most important factor that I have seen in the past, and I've been, I would say, consulting 20 plus companies in the last 3, 4 years to just how to bring AI into their organizations. And the single most important point in my view is ownership. I think if nobody is really owning and feeling responsible to bring AI, it's just as oh, we have it on the to-do list, somebody needs to do it, then it's going to be very, very hard to bring that into the organization. So that's for me the where I see that really makes the difference. It's not a technology, it's not a subscription if you have a pro model or the light version or so. That doesn't really do it. But if it's not really taken seriously in a sense of that you need to bring it into the company and somehow have it as a position, then or as a fixed role, then it's going to be really, really difficult. And the other thing that I see right now is also this, how to say, like how companies want to bring in AI. Usually they say, look, we already work with Microsoft. Let's just get a Copilot license for everybody, and everybody receives a Copilot license. And they're usually more afraid to use it than before because they don't really know if I put in an email address, will I then get somehow laid off the job because I did something really, really bad. They really don't understand the machine, and they have a lot of fears against it. And usually it's also perceived because it's sold like this, hey, just go get the Copilot license and then everybody will be agentic and everybody will have AI and will be 10 times more effective. And the reality is totally different. So you can be happy if the increase of efficiency is even close to 10%. That's my experience.
Yeah.
But where it is when companies start looking into their processes and identify processes, and from A to Z, they need to make very thin slices. So it's not A to Z directly, it's from A to B to C to D to E, etc. And you need to always check which AI in which step is doing the best. And also on the bottom layer, I would say, where does human oversight be needed? And I always compare it, if you have an intern, for example, that starts work in your company, you will also not tell them, hey, build an application from A to Z directly. You will say, look, first build a requirements engineer, then we check it together. And then once we have that, we will go and talk to the customer if he really thinks about that. And then we get the feedback and we iterate one more time. So you go step by step and have an oversight. And this is how I think it's the best way for companies to actually bring in AI. It's to understand their own processes and think about where in those steps can we actually have support of an AI. And one really my favorite word in this thing is experiments. That's something I strongly believe in, that if company are able to see AI in this stage where we are right now, not as a project like, oh, we need to do an AI project or we need to do an AI lighthouse project, rather than they say, hey, let's rather make little experiments and learn along the way, because that will de-risk the whole AI investment. We will understand better what it can help. And just that companies understand, don't talk about AI projects, talk about experiments. Be quick, be fast. And I was very surprised how many companies love this agile process and how easy it is to bring it into a company for a traditional company that was working with Hermes for the last like 40, 50 years. And now all of a sudden they are agile and it works like this. It's so easy for them to adapt, but really need to bring it in.
Yeah, interesting. You touched a couple of points. One I want to dig a little bit deeper is you said, okay, AI needs to be owned by somebody in the company. And my question is, in your experience, who is this person or the team or department? Is it literally the CEO that says, okay, we now go all in on AI? Or is it a department, or is it just a role, or what works best in your experience in the past?
For me, what works best is the CEO has the full body commitment. He says, I just met one CEO on Monday. I gave a workshop at the C level, and at the end he stand up and he says, look, AI has to solve the only purpose in our company, that we are innovative, and everything how we do it we'll organize later, but this is the direction. And he made this commitment at the end of the meeting, and everybody was okay. Now we can let go. And this is something that you need to have. They need to understand that it will change the way they do business compared to what it has been before, and they need to commit in time and also energy and money and resources. That's the top. But they are not the ones who will then monitor and push everything. Therefore, you need to have somebody who's like an assistant, like a chief of staff, that is somehow executing the strategy. And these people then are the ones who own the whole process. They bring it into the organization and communicate upwards what we have done. Won't be the CEO who will sit there and code stuff. It will be dedicated people who are then in that role. This could also be a head of AI or somebody who's really responsible to bring this technology into the company. That's the ideal setting.
Nice. And I also want to touch on the point of experimentation. Okay, for sure, we can start an experiment. That's cool. But how do you basically, make sure that it's not ending up in chaos? And also, okay, there are probably a team that works on experiments, but then how do you basically get buy-in and basically include the rest of the team? Maybe you have some strategies or some ideas on how to do that.
Yeah, the thing how we do it is we have now one case. It's a manufacturing company with 900 employees, and there I went in. The first stage is get them all on the same level about AI, that they know what it is and what it brings, and also show them a few tools with some low hanging fruits, like for example, Perplexity as a search engine or Google Notebook LM to search within documents. That's for most of them already a wow, I didn't know that exists besides ChatGPT and Copilot. So first stage is to just get them on the same level. And then how we do it is then we basically have a little two-page which is called the experiment framework. It's just about that no, experiment idea framework, where they just go in and can define where do I think would AI help me. And now we have one case, for example, it's one division that has 20 different product catalogs of different tools, and they always need to search through these PDFs. And now we said, hey, look, it would be a nice experiment to give these PDFs to an AI, extract all the toolings and put them in a database that is searchable, and you can then add your own specifications, and it's much more accessible than having somebody reading through all the 20 PDFs all the time. And what we then have is, with that team, we just basically frame the business case. So I asked them, how do you imagine, would you come into the store on the Monday morning and you need to pick one tool? How do you want to search? And then basically they explain, well, I open the browser, I can type it in, and then I will see XYZ. And this is where I then gather all the information, how they perceive to work it. What you won't be able to do at this early stage is to say, well, great, now you have the idea, go and code it. They would have absolutely no idea. So what we then do is we are the execution layer. So we receive the idea, we take that, we build something, and we present it 3 days later. We will sit together and say, look, you told me about this. This is a first draft, how it could look like. Is that what you anticipate? And usually they are, wow, yeah, sure. And then can I click there? Can I do that? And then we do another iteration. So the thing is, we are somehow enabling them not to really build the stuff themselves with the tools, because these are really complex things they can't even mimic with Excel or somewhere else. So we build it as a prototype level. We then work together with them, that they are the knowledge and the context givers. and also the owner of the idea, and then we present it all together. This was a collaborative output. It was just me basically building what they told me to do, and then we a few weeks or months later we appear all together with like 5 different teams with 5 different experiments, and we show to the management, look, this is what every team together with our AI capability was doing. Because everything else at this very early stage, where you might have a few cracks who know how to code, they use codex or whatever, they could do that, but they are also limited in their resources. So we get the idea and we work together with them on it, and they will then see, oh, with this AI you did this, oh, that's really cool, that's something, and the learning starts there. And then at the end you have 5 experiments, maybe 3 of them they worked okay, one didn't work, and one worked super well. And then the management can decide, hey, look, this one who worked super well and the other who worked okay, we're going to put into production. This then shifts from being a prototype experimental thing towards a software implementation project.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's just building these use cases and actual experiments with real impact and with multiple teams. And I also like this idea that obviously you need still a lot of expertise to even build these prototypes. That's where companies like yours come in and can help them enable that. One strategy we had at our company is basically normalize the discussion about AI because there is so much hype, and you can watch whatever LinkedIn and YouTube, and everybody has a new whatever. And what we started to do actually roughly a year ago is we do an AI experience share every week or every second week. It's like a lunch and learn format where we just sit together and there is no agenda, so everybody can tell something he learned in the past week. And it can be something very little, a little feature that popped up in Claude Code, or that there is a new model with this and that capability, and just discuss it, while using it, and then just learn from each other and just very hands-on, basically. So you can get a lot of info and excitement about a keynote, but in the end you have to get your hands dirty and actually use it every day, and then also learn on the way. And that's very interesting. So okay, we come close almost to an end. I would actually want your outlook. How are things developing short, mid, long term? Maybe you have some perspectives, some predictions. It's always hard to make a prediction, but maybe you have a kind of a feeling where things are heading.
Yeah, I was just requested by a company yesterday to help them create an AI strategic roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years, and I'd say there's this huge gap is between where do I see the development of AI going, where basically I would say the Silicon Valley dictates where everything is heading. That's something I really can't tell anything. You have now seen with Fabula 5 or something that is coming out and then taken off the market again. So I think there are a lot of things cooking there that will be changing also a lot of things of how we perceive AI, I imagine, especially in the next 1 to 2 years, I would say. But no idea where this is heading, really. That's black box to me, but it's going to be crazy. That's something I know for sure. And within companies, it's a bit hard to say because everybody is now implementing Copilot, and I would say most bigger organizations or other chat software. And I would say in 1 to 2 years, the realization will hit that it doesn't really solve their core problems and it doesn't make them much faster as promised. So I could say, I have the sense that then there will be a bit of a cool down because everybody will say, oh, this AI, it doesn't really work, it doesn't really do the job. And then I don't know how open they will be for reinvestments. Either they will understand, okay, we maybe did it, approached it the wrong way, and then they're going to shift. But what I think is there will be more and more adoption that AI will find its place into organizations, and also the big software or the software companies will also integrate more and more AI. So I think within application you will see more efficiency that will be happening, and overall this could also then make the companies and people more efficient. But I think then we just uplift the level for everybody. It's not that you have a really competitive advantage. I think the only competitive advantage you really have if you look at your core application processes or core processes that you have in the company, and really think, reimagine how would this look like if we would make it 10 times more efficient? What would we need to change to really conquer the status quo? And then you can maybe do something and then implement really sophisticated AI, and the models will become better, more stable, more transparent, more reliable. So I think there will have a maturity in AI that will come in, and then it's on different layer. The question, you then have your local AI again, because cloud will be more expensive if you have tokens. So you buy an Nvidia or AMD something, you put that in a shelf. So that's a bit the question. So this is basically where I see, but it's really hard to predict. I think companies will be battling for the next few years even more with the data that they have in their systems. They will realize, oh, okay, it's not the AI end that is the problem. It's basically the data that we have put into our CRM system or ERP system. So that's where I see the biggest hurdle and biggest challenge. So I hope that companies start working today on the data and data quality they have in their systems to be prepared for the next wave.
Interesting. And one question I know lots of people ask themselves, how they can stay relevant, like the individuals. What do you suggest to knowledge workers with now this big wave of AI? What do you suggest to knowledge workers?
The very end, it's experiences and what you have done and what you have been involved, because AI can do a lot, but it's all, how to say, on a very, it's on all on paper. You really then need also to execute a few things. So you can develop a go-to-market strategy with AI, but then you need to execute it. You need to go to a country to experience it. And I think the being relevant doesn't mean like I produce a piece of paper. That's not really a relevance. It's more about I understand how what this paper involves, and I put it to execution. I do something, as you mentioned just before. It's a hands-on thing. You need to do something with it, and I think the more experiences people can make on that level, the better they can then also conquer to whatever comes. If you want to stay relevant, you need to do relevant stuff, and relevant stuff is not creating a document. It's putting it to execution, talking with people about it, getting different opinions, building up partnerships, relationship, connections. I guess that's the most valuable thing to do. And then of course using the technology and not saying, oh, it's something I don't want to put my fingers on, because then you will have somebody who does that, and then they will be more efficient, better, clearer, whatever it then is. So you really need to work with this technology and not be against it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also a teacher at the university, and how are your students think about these developments? Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they excited? What is the general sentiment?
I think it's a wild mix, because they are excited in a sense. They use these tools for their studies every day, so for them it's super easy. On our end, it's more that they somehow lose the critical thinking and critical reflection, and also they lose the patience to sit there on a problem and think through it for 3 hours. It's just, if ChatGPT can give me an answer, then it doesn't work, and you're like, think about it, and that's something that I see. And the biggest challenge that I see afterwards is, especially now, the students like bachelor in software development and machine learning AI, they no longer know how to code. So they can't code. They don't understand what like these 100 lines of Python actually mean. And that's something, either it's a bet of, do they even need to know what the machine codes, or if they know, that's probably, it could be an asset for them that they really know how to develop without AI. So this is just something. And the biggest challenge that I see right now, there's the market of junior developers is disappearing. That's something that bothers me a lot, because, and you see it now with the developers extremely. You have the same in consulting companies and knowledge worker, like law firms, and everybody like that. If you give a senior developer AI, he will be like 3-4 times more efficient. Then they ask themselves, why should I train a junior if the junior work is delegated to my 10 agents? And fair enough, but that creates a huge gap. You will no longer be able to create seniors if you don't have the juniors. And juniors can only become seniors not because of AI, but because experiences and making mistakes, learning from it, implementing an end-to-end pipeline or whatever it is, like complex stuff. And this is something that I see, which bothers me a lot, which I don't have a solution for, but this is something which I find quite critical at the moment, that there's a huge gap being created at the moment.
All right. So, okay, let's finally wrap it up. Maybe one last question I wanted to ask. Do you have like an article, a book, or a project you want to share in this context we discussed, where people maybe want to check out? Does something come to your mind?
Not right now, no. I have nothing that popped up recently that I would say, hey, you should read that. So no, not at the moment.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can restate the paperclip experiment you want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
People can try it for themselves and see how that works. Yeah. Okay. So how can people find you and your work? You mentioned your company, gopf.com. You're on LinkedIn. Do you have a blog or something like that? Is there where people can follow you?
So you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm posting quite frequently there. That's the only social media challenge I use. And besides that, we have the website gopf.com, where you can also find my contact details. Yeah.
Wonderful. And is there maybe a final thought you want to share based on this discussion, conversation?
Hey, I always say stay curious. I said like try things, make little experiments, as I mentioned before, and just try to get into that technology if you haven't yet, and just take your passion, your hobby, your sports team, whatever it is, and just try to build something for them with them, just to get closer to it. And then it's a lot about people business, I would say. Also, my job is 90% people business, so talk to people, build a network, try to understand what problems they have. It's really it becomes over time more and more less about the technology, it's more about the people.
Yeah, what a wonderful end. Thank you very much, Kevin, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.